Oh my gosh, I don't think we were actually live.
That's hilarious.
Okay, so I'm pretty sure
Wait, I'm cracking up because
this is very funny, and this is the difficulty of the technical difficulties. Thank you, Joe, in the chat. Oh my god. So, for everybody who's just tuning in, we
have been talking at ourselves for so long.
Have thought that we were live for the last
8 minutes?
8 minutes we started and have just been talking, and we're in preview mode. So we're gonna dial it back and restart again. Huge shout out to Joe. As soon as you said I can't wait to see you guys, made me realize that holy crap, this didn't actually turn on. So embarrassing. Can't believe we messed that up. Thank you. We've got Jonathan and Joe. Oh my god. So
wait,
we
just talked for so long.
We just talked for 8 minutes, did all the introductions. So
now
we're gonna have
here,
to.
You didn't want me sitting here.
Yeah, I did a whole intro, pulled Lauren in. Now we're starting. She's here, but we're rolling with the punches. And a lot of what we were talking about was problem solving on the fly when things go wrong. So we're gonna roll back the tape.
I didn't like my answers anyway, so
Perfect.
Now
We get a do-over.
I feel like I got the nerves out, and now it's gonna be okay.
So please let us know that you can hear us and see us. It seems like things are working. Hello. So dialing it back where we were, introduced my incredible, fantastic, lovely wife, Lauren White, who is my one-woman videographer, support crew, cheer squad, etc., doing all of the behind-the-scenes work. And the big focus I was trying to convey was just that I love the sport of running. I love the races that I have the privilege of taking on. I love the adventures I've been able to go on. But the only reason that I'm able to accomplish those things is because of the support of this fantastic woman. So wanted to give her an opportunity to meet everyone. We've kind of teased throughout how much work she's doing behind the scenes. So thought it would be fun to bring her onto a live video to talk about some of those things. So sorry for the technical difficulties, but we'll go ahead and jump in. So Lauren, reintroduce yourself to the wonderful world of YouTube.
I hate attention, so now that I got the jitters out, but now I have to do this all again, and now the attention. I'm Lauren. That's me behind the scenes carrying the magic blue backpack.
So we'll dive in and we will re-describe the magic blue backpack. Getting lots of love in the chat. Great to see everyone. As Darla pointed out, yes, my smoke show as a wife, as I've been known to call her in
wedding
speeches on occasion. But one of the things I mentioned was how much of that we talked about before we went live, when we thought we were live, for these endurance efforts especially. So the next race I have coming up, for anyone who's not aware, February 4th is going to be the Rocky Raccoon 100-miler. And for these long distance endurance races, there's so much planning that has to go into them, and you pretty much know going into it that at some point along 100 miles, things are going to go wrong. And so a lot of it is just about problem solving in the moment, preparing for as much as you can, but then being able to think on the fly. And that's where I feel like Lauren really shines, not just for motivating me, but when things are starting to go wrong and I'm having a hard time thinking through how to fix them, her being able to provide solutions. One of which was the magic blue bag, which I will turn it over to Lauren to explain the glories within.
So the magic blue bag is how many liters?
So we went through this. I can't remember if it's 40 or 60 liters. I think it's a 60-liter bag.
All right. So the magic blue bag contains every single thing that might be needed during a race. So extra shoes and clothes and Band-Aids and snacks and electrolytes and blister popping devices and extra batteries, head lamps for overnight running. What am I missing?
Basically
everything you can imagine.
Yeah, that you could need. And what made this bag truly magic, or why it was so helpful, was basically before Mohican 100 was the last one I attempted in June, and before the race, it was Lauren's first time crewing at the 100-miler, and so kind of went through, had I don't know how many different piles of things. Here's the medical equipment I need. Here are the blister packs I have prepared. If it rains, here are all the dry clothes I might need. Here's a spare pair of shoes if something happens. Electrolytes, salt pills, different types of food, etc. Everything that I could possibly need organized very well in kind of themed piles, but just kind of scattered around. I went off and started the race, and at the first meetup point where we saw Lauren, she was carrying this giant 60-liter bag that I had packed all of my stuff in for the weekend trip, and had basically just dumped everything out and took all of those organized piles and kept them very well organized, but inside this bag, so that it was very easy for her on the fly, wherever they needed to meet us. She could just flip open the bag. Okay, what do you need? You need medical stuff? I have it here. You need food? I have it here. And again, just that on the fly stuff that I wouldn't have thought about. And it sounds like John wants to see the bag, so I'm gonna turn it over to you to talk to. No, I'm gonna.
No,
you're gonna talk to the wonderful people.
I want to go get it.
Do you know where it is?
Yes, I know where it is.
So Lauren's gonna go grab the magical blue bag. It's actually, I think they still make this bag. It is. I got it as a free test product in my early days of being as a part of BibRave. It is one of the greatest things I've ever received. It's easily my favorite travel bag. Not quite carry-on, so if we're traveling and want to bring carry-on, I won't pack this, but for road trips, for weekend trips, it is easily my favorite bag. You can see it folds up very conveniently and very small into this nice little pouch, but then you open it up.
Oh, it's just the best.
And it all folds out, and it should say the size on here, so hopefully we can give you a definitive response on how big it is. I saw Alexis is joining on the chat. She'll be familiar with this bag because it's what I always bring to your apartment when I stay there. And it is 60 liters, so it probably doesn't look as impressive empty, but it's this giant duffel bag. It's very deep. And the reason I love it so much is A, it's very durable material, so you can just toss it around. Everything's like double and triple seamed, so you can pack it super, super full. But on the front, it has backpack straps that attach to it as well. So once it's packed, you throw the backpack straps on, and so it's very easy to travel with because you can just throw it on your back, carry it wherever you'd like to go. So this was the Magic Blue Bag at the last Mohican race. I'm not sure if it will make the journey to Rocky Raccoon.
Oh my God.
If it fits in my carry-on closed up, we might bring it just so that we can have the superstitious good luck of the Magic Blue Bag. But for travel-wise, especially with all of the issues in the airline industry right now, I am going to try to avoid checking a bag, because if I lost something or my luggage somehow got misplaced on the way to this race, it would be absolutely devastating. Oh, John has the bag. Yes, Eagle Creek.
John does?
Eagle Creek is the outfitter if you'd like to check them out. Again, I think they still have that bag. They have a ton of amazing bags, but that is an incredible luggage. I love it. It is fantastic. So that is the Magic Blue Bag. And please feel free, if you have questions come up, please continue to ask, because I want her to be able to answer the questions that you have as well. But no, it does not only come in blue, Joe. There are plenty of color options, but the blue brings out my eyes. So again, something that we spoke about a little bit before, but when we weren't actually on camera, I'll go ahead and ask it again. What are your favorite parts about being the support crew videographer, all the different hats that you wear during the races? What are some of your favorite parts? What are some of the tougher parts? Just give the listeners an overall view of what it all entails.
Okay. The worst part is the stress and anxiety of not doing a good job or not giving you what you need when you need it, or forgetting something. That's the worst part. Second to that is waiting for you to come into a checkpoint and being stressed about if you've fallen or hurt yourself or are still running or are hallucinating, because we learned that happens in these 100-mile races. You guys hallucinate. So those are the stressful parts. The best parts are when you guys come running in and everybody cheers and we're all excited, and hanging out with all the lovely other videographer, crew member people on the other teams.
I think, something that's definitely different. And I feel like it'll be cool, too, to get your perspective on road, because obviously you've crewed a ton of my road races as well. Obviously some of the very
races.
clear.
Ryan runs road races.
That's the dream of, and that's the promise I've made to Lauren. So I don't think Todd's on the live stream, but I've made sure to reiterate to him that this Rocky Raccoon 100 is the last 100-miler attempt.
So was the last 100-miler.
So was the last one, but this time we mean it. So hopefully we'll be able to get the finish this time. But I think it'll be helpful to talk about like some of the difficulties with road racing compared to the trail running, because I think there are pros to both and cons for both. But like you mentioned, one of the most difficult parts about the ultras is I can give an estimate. Like here's the pace that I think for ultra specifically. Here's the pace that I think we're going to be running at. But for Mohican, as an example, the first 2 loops are 27 miles. And it's on trails. Mohican especially is a very, very hilly course. So I think this past year, I think our first loop was around 7.
It was fast.
I thought it was like 6 or 7 hours.
But it was fast.
Somewhat. But yeah, 6 or 7 hours. And you think about it, like even a minute, if your pace is a minute off, if my estimate of our pace is a minute off, that's 27 minutes difference on either side when we could come in. So it really could be a wide range of when they would expect us. There are some timers along the course to give you an idea of how we're progressing, but cell signal isn't great. We're out in the wilderness, so you can't really track people throughout. So it really is just a guessing game and waiting for folks. And I would imagine like every time you hear a crowd start to erupt as someone comes out of the woods looking to see like, is this
and
them?
You also like learn the people that come in before you. So you're like, oh, there's the guy in the bright yellow tank top. They are only 7 minutes and 20 seconds behind him. Or at least they were the last time.
And yeah, that's one of my favorite parts about the races is you see a lot of the same folks, and what the term that everyone uses is you kind of leapfrog with people throughout the course, because some people might go really fast through aid stations, some people might take it slower at aid stations, some people are going to power walk, some people are going to run, split up the distances, what have you. So you see a lot of the same folks and kind of get to strike up and have conversations, which helps knowing the sort of people that we're around. Which goes really well into, Darla has a question, which would be, how do you pass the time in between? If a loop is taking 7 hours, what are you doing during those 7
Darla,
hours?
I had a lot of White Claws at Mohican last June. But it was a lot of just hanging out. We do a lot of cooking. We made a lot of quesadillas for the boys, not for us. And I mean, what else did we do? We listened to music, and we were at the lake last time, so we were sitting at a lake or pond, lake or pond. But it's a lot of downtime. I think I might have lesson planned a little bit last time.
Got some work done to take your mind off things.
But yeah, a lot of downtime. There were White Claws enjoyed by all, and cooking.
And that's another thing that you mentioned also, of just like when the stress of wanting to make sure you have the right things and hoping that you don't forget something.
Repacking the bag 19 times is also part of the downtime.
And that's because so for the ultras, when we come in, a lot of it is like going through a checklist that we put together ahead of time. What do we need in the moment? What are the questions you have to ask? One of them, to be perfectly honest, that we usually ask is like, when was the last time you peed? How often are you peeing? What color is your pee? Because hydration, especially for Mohican, because it was so hot, it's such a major concern and could make or break the race depending on how you monitor it. But getting like real granular with the questions, just some basic checking in, but then restocking the bag. What did you eat? What do we need to replace? How many calories have you been having? And trying to keep track of, you run a deficit throughout the entire race. You're going to run a significant calorie deficit, but trying to compensate as much as you can. But part of the difficulty of that is us having the conversation beforehand. Here are all the foods that I would like at the beginning of each loop. But then when I finish a loop, not wanting, and quesadillas was one of them. My first Mohican, quesadillas were my favorite. I ate at least a full quesadilla every single loop, and that was kind of my go-to snack. And this time I could barely stomach them, and I think it was just part of it was the heat, but for whatever reason it was not appetizing to me. Another hilarious one was the Kodiak cakes. Because they're super calorie dense. Each one is like 250 calories, and I used them during the Goggins challenge, and they were perfect. Like as soon as I ran or right before I ran, they sat well in my stomach.
You almost vomited this time.
And this time, yeah. Lauren, to her credit, you were doing what I asked, which was basically like when I'm sitting in camp, make make sure that I'm eating because that's a time when I need to get calories in, but went a little bit overboard trying to eat too much, and took one bite too many, had to sit down for a minute, breathe, put ice on my neck, and came very close to upchucking everything, but was able to keep it down, thankfully. Similarly, it has to be said that also I feel like in a lot of cases, the crewing can be not necessarily a thankless job, but the range of emotions that I go through during road races and ultras is a pretty wild spin. And I feel like Lauren's had to see me at some of my worst moments as well, and always like handles it with such grace. When the one that sticks out in my mind is the Delaware Marathon, where I hit a turnaround after a very long straightaway out in the sun. It was brutal. It was a very hard effort that day. I was very hot, and was reaching this turnaround. I knew I was as far away from the finish line as I was going to be. Lauren was there to cheer me on, knowing that it was going to be a very hard part of the race and to provide me with some gels. And I basically just like ran past, threw stuff at her, grabbed as many gels as I can. And she was trying to ask me questions for the camera, like, how are you feeling? I was like, I hate it. I want to be done. I can't do this. And just ran, didn't stop to say hi, didn't do anything. Just kind of like threw all this junk at her, was like, take my trash, and just ran right past. So couldn't do this video without saying like how much I appreciate that when I'm at those low points, you don't take it out on me, you let me commiserate a little bit, because I'm sure we will experience that, especially in the early hours of the Rocky Raccoon Challenge for the overnight. So again, just an overview of Rocky Raccoon too for timing, and then I know we have some questions coming through. The race, I think it starts at 5 a.m. on Saturday, and you have something like 30 or 32 hours to finish. So we'll probably aim around like the 30-hour mark, maybe a little bit before that, is how we'll budget our time. So that way we have some time to lose on the end if anything goes wrong, or if we slow down. Hopefully we'll have some time in the bank, but it is a long endurance effort. We will run through the night, Saturday into Sunday. The temperature swings. It's in Houston, or it's just outside of Houston. The temperature swings right now look pretty significant, so I think the cold will be a factor.
Which one you did Bandera was rough for us on the
Why
sideline.
don't you talk about the Bandera?
How cold it was? Well, I mean...
Oh, yeah, talk about the cold for you, and then trying to convince me to put pants on.
Well, yeah, it was just really cold, and we're obviously not running, and like Ryan mentioned before, we have no idea where they're coming in or when they're coming in because of a myriad of reasons. Ryan's bloody nose was one of those reasons at Bandera, but it was very cold. We were wrapped up quite tightly in all of our blankets.
It was in the 30s, right? Mid to low 30s.
And I remember just sitting in the car, and we were like, they have to be close. And we all got out, and we wrapped ourselves up, and we sprinted to the spot to watch you. And we saw you guys come in, and we saw you guys leave, and we were like, okay, that's it. We're done. And we run back. So what you don't know about the spectators is we bitch a lot. Yeah. We're really happy when we see you, but we bitch a lot on the side.
And from the runner's perspective, that was one of the moments where like Lauren definitely knew what was better for me, but I was like, once it got cold during that race, Todd and I had hit a zone, we hit a flow, and we were just like we had hit a rough spot during the day. And then for whatever reason, once the sun went down, obviously it's easier to run in the cold, but we were just cruising. It felt great. And so I refused to stop to put on warmer clothes. I think I put on like a light jacket, but was just in shorts still. And was like, you know what? Adrenaline's still going. I feel fine. And didn't have any issues during the race. But immediately following, probably experienced some mild hypothermia, but basically just went into full body tremors, which didn't stop for a couple hours. We were sitting back in the apartment, and I was just going from like, I would wrap myself up like crazy. I would start sweating. I'd take it off. I'd start shivering uncontrollably, and it was very hard to get back in check. So that's something that we will keep an eye on. If it gets a little bit cooler, I won't be as hesitant to put on warmer clothes. Plus, we'll be moving a lot slower, I'd imagine. So Alexis wants to know, are there any specific best experience from the support side, best experiences you can think of, and then on the flip side, worst experiences from the support side?
Well, I'm going to start with a neutral. Well, it wasn't neutral for Ryan, but it was funny for me. Was the morning of Mohican, we do like our whole thing, right? The boys are getting themselves amped up. We're getting them amped up. We're getting our bags packed. And it's time to walk to the starting line, which was only like, a 2-minute walk from where we were staying at Mohican.
Very close.
And Ryan gets like 20 yards outside of the door and realizes he's not wearing his running shoes, and he left them inside. So That was a real good way to
Not
start
just
that
not wearing
race.
running shoes, I was wearing flip-flops because I wear toe socks for these races to prevent blisters, and so I had just been walking around as we were getting ready, I was just been walking around in the flip-flops to enjoy freedom for my feet as long as possible. And then everyone's like, time to go, and I was like, yep, let's go. And yeah, wasn't until
Wasn't wearing
20,
sneakers.
30 yards from, I went to go do a lunge and stretch, and my foot just slipped forward in the flip-flop, and I was like, oh my God, I'm not even wearing shoes right now. We're walking to the starting line.
So yeah, that was a funny experience. What was the question? The highs and the lows?
Yeah, highs and the lows.
Okay. The high is definitely when you all come running like down the chute into wherever we're waiting for you, and like seeing you for the first time after not seeing you for so long is the high. The low is definitely seeing you guys or you like hurting or sad or about to vomit and pushing you on your way to keep going and being miserable. Also, I mean, that on-the-fly blister pop at Mohegan was you know how much I hate feet. It was a pretty low moment for me. Having to pop your blister in.
So yeah, that's a peek behind the curtain. So I got a very nasty blister at Bandera during our first ultra that didn't bother me at all during the race, but then once we took the shoes and socks off, couldn't believe how massive this blister was. And so to prevent that, I started taping my feet before the race, taping big toe, second toe, and pinky toe to prevent rubbing. Under the ball of my foot and around the heel are some of like the typical hot spots. And so it's a long process to tape, and it's a long process in the morning.
And we had to practice it before going to Mohegan.
Yeah, I had to show Lauren because I was like, if we need to do like a quick change in the middle of the race, like I might not be able to reach my feet, I might be having trouble, like you might have to do this. So walk through like how to obviously like swab it down, rub it with alcohol, make sure it's all clean. If there are blisters, we got to drain them. But everything's got to be quick. And then it's not just taping it, but obviously tape's gonna, if you're running so much, your feet are moving so much, it's gonna peel off. So we have an adhesive spray that we spray on, then you put the tape on, then you paint a little bit around the corners.
I mean, you spent like an hour and a half before we went to Mohegan cutting pieces of tape and
that's the
bagging
longest
them
part.
individually.
Yeah, the longest part is cutting the tape to the specific sizes and labeling what it's for. So again, on the fly, you don't have to do any of that in the moment. Everything's taped. There's an order that it goes in on, so that hopefully it goes quickly. And so we did change the tape halfway through. That's something I'm thinking of changing this time because the blisters weren't unbearable, and I'm thinking the time suck of putting it on might not be worth the relief from the blisters. It might just be worth still tape in the beginning, but then just not worry about changing socks and shoes and keep them on longer.
Also, Kirsty just left a note in the chat box how that's a real low for me. So I mean, in terms of a me perspective, it would be
a big help. So something to consider as well. I do want to also call out my dad's comment because it's so true that Todd might be out training, which actually is a funny joke, but also possibly very true. So my good friend Todd, one of my best friends from high school, we ran cross country together. We've run a few marathons together, and we suffer through these ultra marathons together. Truly, there's no one I'd rather go through these races with. We have such a fun time commiserating together, celebrating together, and I feel like we are the perfect balance to keep pushing each other through the race. But his training for this race has been impeccable. He's done such a good job. He basically trained for a marathon in October, and then has been consistently running 20 milers every couple weeks, it seems like, since then. So he's kept in really good shape. He's definitely put in the work ahead of time.
Go Todd.
And he, I believe, could be outrunning. His plan was to run a 40-mile run today as his final long run before the race. He is also a pilot for a subsidiary of American, so with everything that happened with the FAA yesterday, not sure if that interrupted his plans to run today. But yeah, his goal was to hit 40 miles today as a training run before this race, as opposed to my training, which has gone very poorly. I won't even say what my longest run is because it makes me nervous to talk about it. But I think one thing that something I think I shared this with you before last year's Mohican. There's another guy who we've run Mohican. There's a group of guys that we ran Mohican with. We met them all at the first Mohican. We all returned for the second one. It was our kind of pod of guys that ran it. But one of the folks that ran it, Tim, who is an incredible ultra runner. I've never met anyone who has a stronger ability to just like put your head down and grit through the suffering. He finished Mohican last year. He was one of only two from our group that finished, and he was only like 3 or 4 weeks off of his last 100-mile attempt. So he's just incredible. But what he said is that ultramarathon running comes down to the 3 Ps. First and foremost, it's preparation. You do as much as you can to just prepare for the race, knowing that preparation isn't everything, and at some point things are going to go wrong. So the second part is problem solving, thinking on the fly, and that's where crew comes in such handy and is such a valuable resource, especially towards those later miles where it's the cognitive processing speed slows down significantly. Having someone to just talk through things with and make recommendations is incredibly helpful. So you have the problem solving on the fly, and then when all else fails, it's just perseverance and just putting your head down. So much of these races is mental, and I feel like that's the part that I feel strongest about, and we've talked a lot about this going into the race, is just knowing that it's gonna suck, knowing that we're gonna hit really tough spots, but it's just about continued forward progress, just about moving forward and coming up with, that's something that I think we've talked a lot about, is like, what do you need to remind me of if I'm hitting a low point? What are the things, how to talk to me, how to handle it, what to work through to just get me out and keep me moving? Because as long as we're moving forward, we can finish. As long as you maintain a 19-minute mile, you will finish under the cutoff. And so it's just about getting out there and just keep moving forward. And so that's the part that we're working on now. The training hasn't been great, but working on the mental piece and just gritting through when the going gets tough. I saw another question. Oh, that was the one that John asked. During the off times, do you ever nap? Or you said both of us, so I'll go ahead and say that I do not, just because for the timing piece, it would eat too much into our time, especially if we're coming close to the cutoff. So we will plan not to sleep unless it's like a dire emergency. Ultramarathon runners do sometimes take they'll call it like a reset or Control-Alt-Delete your brain, where it's basically you take like a 5 to 6 minute power nap, and it's just your body's so exhausted that just closing your eyes, you fall asleep, someone wakes you up in 5 minutes, and it's just enough to reset the mind. If you are having issues with hallucinations, I've heard that that's like an immediate fix. It's just enough to wake you up. But I don't expect that we'll need to do that for you see that more in like a little bit longer than 100 milers, but it is a backup plan if something goes wrong in the 100 miler. But for crew, how do you handle the long hours?
I mean, I did not nap at Mohican last year. We were up, at like 3 a.m. to start making food and getting everything organized. You guys were off at 5. And I mean, we went back and just hung out. I think everyone's adrenaline was so high. And you guys dropped at like 1:30 in the morning?
No, it was before midnight. We didn't quite make it to midnight. Yeah, I think we came into the final aid station around 11, and we were at the last aid station for a while.
Maybe
going
I'm thinking
back and
of
forth.
like when we like finished up. Well,
Yeah.
either way,
we were back in the cabin around 1:30 because Todd had to get his IV.
That's right. Either way, we had been up for a long time, and we didn't sleep that day at all. And I don't think, had you guys continued, I would have been able to sleep, because it just would have been a real stressful sleep, just not knowing what was happening, and if you were dropping out somewhere else and needed someone's help, or if you needed something somewhere. So I did not sleep then. I don't anticipate sleeping this time, but I mean, I guess I'll try that 5-minute power nap. Reset my brain.
That's something nice about this race. Nice on the one hand, but then adds responsibility on the crewing end. One of the reasons that we chose Rocky Raccoon is it's the same organization that did Bandera, which was the first ultra marathon we did, 100 kilometers, 62 miles in San Antonio. It's the same organization that plans that race. Similar structure. Again, this one's outside of Houston in a state park, but it's 5 loops instead of 4. So each loop is 20 miles. So significantly shorter. Again, 5 miles.
Significantly.
5 miles doesn't seem like that much, but it's an hour off of each loop. The other nice thing is it's a much flatter course. It's a much more accessible course in terms of spots that you can. I think the crew is able to get to every aid station, which was not the case at Mohican. There are only a couple that you can get to. Some of them are relatively remote. And again, there's very little cell reception, so tracking is a massive challenge. But at this one, it's shorter loops. It's the 5 loops, and the aid stations are more accessible. So likely for the overnight piece, I think that's when motivation starts to struggle. We will have a pacer. Todd's sister is going to run with us to pace us for some of those tougher spots. But also, if we need it, we'll be able to see the crew at each of those aid stations. And also can't overstate how helpful that is of just knowing that it's not just, you're not just seeing friends and family, you're not just seeing crew at the end of each loop, but having them to look forward to at each aid station. Even if we don't necessarily need support, just like having the check-in point.
I changed my answer before. Was it Alexis who asked the best?
Yeah, yep.
The high? That was the high at Mohican last year, was when we weren't expecting to see you at that one, like, it wasn't even an aid station. It was just like a viewing point where you could see people. What was it, like the fire tower or something?
The dam?
Whatever it was. Yeah, and you guys came out of the woods. You come out of the woods into like a parking lot for a second, right? And like you're on the perimeter of the parking lot, and then you had like loop back into the woods. And we were there, and you guys were so excited. And that was like a boost for us because it was then going to be like 6 hours till we saw you again at the end of the loop. But then it was exciting for you guys, and I think that was a good.
And that was, from the runner perspective, that was massively helpful. Because again, we weren't expecting to see anyone at that point, and that point of the race, you're finishing a challenging section. You've got a quick downhill run to the next aid station, but then you're starting, I think one of the hardest parts of the course is just this brutal uphill climb to the next aid station. It's a long section, and this was during the second loop, which is at the hottest part of the day. I think it was in the 80s this year, high 70s, low 80s this year. Humidity is through the roof during that race, and so we are just struggling. Again, we've just finished a massively steep climb, and knowing that we still have so far to go, and then coming out of the woods and seeing our crew not just there to motivate us, like to get our energy up, but with a cooler full of frozen Powerade ice pops, which, I mean, for me was phenomenal, but we were still running with our full group at that point. And you talked about like the friends that you make along the way and like bonding with other crew members. All the other families came as well. So with the other guys that were with us, who I know some of them were hitting lows at that point as well, being able to lift them all up. And we left that aid station hot, just like flying down the hill like it was a reset.
We
just
left it hot too. We were excited.
Yeah. So that was very, very exciting. And yeah, like I think that's those like little surprises. You never know when someone's going to hit a low. It's such a roller coaster. And so being able to provide those brief moments of joy during 32 hours of misery is it's quite an adventure.
Can I read the chat? There are so many questions in the chat. Okay. So Joseph Stewart wants to know, what do you eat throughout? Do you get hungry? LOL.
Excellent question. And it's so hard to answer because it's like in the moment, you never know what in the moment is going to be appetizing. And I think that's one of the hardest parts of ultra marathons. And I think one of the things that a lot of folks recommend, like the pros always recommend training for, but I feel like me as an amateur, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I feel like you see this a lot. The training your gut for these races is not something a lot of people focus on. And what I mean by that is just like training yourself to run while eating, because you need to consistently be taking calories in. I think we aim for like 250 to 300 calories per hour. Dr. John, who's in the chat, you can maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's close to the max calories you can physically process, physically digest in an hour during activity, is around 250, 300 calories without making yourself sick. And so it's a delicate balance because you're obviously burning way more than that. So you want to eat as close to the max as you can to, again, reduce that deficit over time. But it's so hard to know what's going to be appetizing in the moment, especially when it's hot. I do hope if the weather, knock on wood, is good in Houston for this race, that won't be as much of an issue, because that's not an issue we ran into at Bandera. Like, I was fine eating basically everything. Their aid stations are very well stocked. They have really, really good food available, a nice spread of things. So like sometimes you're craving sweet, sometimes you're craving salty. And for me, I just go with like, trust my gut. Whatever I look at and seems really appetizing, that's what I gravitate towards. Ramen broth is, when it gets cold, once it hits overnight, ramen broth is the miracle cure. And I think that a huge part of that is the salt content. Like that, just like it tastes so good during the late hours of the race. The noodles go down easy. Like that is, at Bandera, it was just like, oh, we crushed ramen broth. I love pickles. Unfortunately, calories wise, they are not efficient at all. They are virtually nothing. I think they are 0 calories, but they do provide some electrolytes. I gravitate towards those. Quesadillas, just plain cheese quesadillas have been big. Peanut butter jelly sandwiches, trail mix. One thing that's worked 100% of the time that I really like is just plain Lay's potato chips. Again, the salt content is good. It's pretty good calories as well. I'll bring some running food, like occasional gels, just because it's... Yeah, waffles are good. The gels are helpful if I just need, like, if I haven't been getting calories in, or if I hit a point where maybe something doesn't seem appetizing, I can usually still get gels down. That's an easy 100 calories. But yeah, it's just whatever seems appetizing. And again, making sure you're eating enough. And my strategy tends to be to just kind of take food in slowly as we're running, but then at the aid stations, like, load up as much as I can from the aid station. We try to move through the aid stations quickly because that time adds up. If we're walking like a 16-minute pace, but then we spend 5 to 10 minutes at an aid station, that's adding 1 or 2 minutes to our mile time. And so just being very aware of that. So we try to move through, grab what we can, and then just walk through and kind of eat as we walk a little bit to digest, and then run when we can. But it's a combination of things that we think is good as well as what's available and seems appetizing in the moment. A great question. It is something that's always on our mind, and probably one of the more difficult ones. Would you like to check out more questions?
I would. Okay. We missed one of H's questions up a little bit. He said, is each 20-mile loop the same exact route?
Yes, so at this one, it is. At Mohican, they were different. It's 4 loops. The first 2 were 27 miles, and the second 2 were 23 miles. I will just say, as a funny aside, something that is not lost on me and kind of like dark humor, what I found hilarious was that the entire race, all we talked about as like a carrot to motivate us, to lead us, was that once you finish the second loop, you feel like you're only halfway, but you're motivated because you know you've put in the extra miles. You're more than halfway, so you have less than half the race to go, which doesn't seem like much, but is a huge mental boost in the moment. And the portion that they cut out is the worst part of the course. It's the longest leg of the race. It's all uphill. It's a brutal portion of the course, and they cut that out. So not only are the loops shorter, they're significantly easier. And the cut happens, you get to an aid station, and then there's one way that you go out for a short loop and a different way that you go out for the long loop. And when you leave for the short loop, it's only 2 miles from that aid station to the next one, and it's all downhill, so it's the opposite.
You're talking about Mohican, and didn't you say at Rocky Raccoon they're going to be 20 miles?
Yes.
So are those all the same?
That's what I'm going to go back to Rocky Raccoon. I just wanted to tell the aside about Mohican, because I thought this was very funny at last year's race, was that we kept talking about throughout the whole race, just think of how nice it's going to be when we get here and we get to take that short loop. It's going to be beautiful. Going through the second time, we were like, imagine the next time we're here, we get to take that short loop. It's all downhill to the next aid station. That whole long stretch that we were going to get to avoid every step, we're like, this is the last time we have to see this hill. We're never going to see it again. And then we start the third loop, and that's the aid station that we dropped at. So we never got to do the downhill. We never got to enjoy the short loop. We made it to that point, and then we're like, no more. We can't do it. We're out of here. But yes, at Rocky Raccoon, it's 5 20-mile loops. They're all the same. They're all the same loop. I think the first one might have like a weird little leg on it because they're not quite 20 miles. So just to make up the difference, to make sure we hit 100 miles. But virtually, they will all be the same exact loop. And it's kind of an out and back. It winds its way around. So again, very easy for the crew to follow along, which I think should be very, very helpful.
Have you ever thought, or have you ever tried barefoot shoes? Tiger Jazz 61.
So I have run in them previously, never for trail races. I use them a lot for hiking, and I did run. I don't think I ever ran a full road race, but when Vibram was in its heyday and being so celebrated, and I had just read Born to Run, so of course I was very excited about barefoot running. I did start training a little bit in barefoot shoes. I still do occasionally run barefoot, like I'll do barefoot runs on the beach, or if it's soft turf, just because I think it is really good to like strengthen the muscles in the feet and just let them open up a bit. But for these races, I do not. I prefer trail shoes. I prefer a little bit of extra cushion. I got new shoes for this race it's about the same cushion. It's just a little bit sturdier of a foam. I ran into an issue at the last Mohican. I actually thought I had broken my foot in the days following the race because I couldn't put any weight on my left foot. Right on the outside of the arch was just incredibly painful. Any kind of movement hurt, and was just getting progressively worse. It wasn't recovering at all. It was only getting worse. Went to go get it x-rayed and found out that I am one of, I forget what the population is. I think it's like 1 in
It's something crazy.
10. It's some small percentage of the population has this extra bone that they call an accessory bone that's in your foot. It serves no purpose. It's from some point in our evolution, but is no longer necessary. And it's embedded in a tendon. It just sits there, again, serves no functional purpose, but when it's overused, it causes significant and very painful inflammation, and that's what happened. And I found the best way to recover from that was having when I wore, and instinctually, the first thing I did was wear like recovery shoes because I thought that would help, just having a soft landing to step on, but that was what was making it worse. Having like a more binding structured shoe actually helped in that instance. So I'm opting for a shoe with a little bit more structure, a little bit more cushion underfoot to hopefully stave off some of those symptoms later into this race.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. And then I see Joe and/or Christy also asked about hydration. Is there too much water to take in? Yes, and again, I will defer to John, Dr. John, for expert opinion. But yes, that hydration is a really big concern, and again, is something that really fluctuates based on the difficulty of the course, as well as the temperature and the climate. So Mohican, it was a real big concern because it was so hot and humid. You were sweating out so much fluid, so you had to take in a lot of water. But then you also have to take in a lot of salt and a lot of electrolytes to make sure that you can continue to absorb that water. Because if you're sweating out all your salt and you're only drinking water, eventually you're going to hit a point of diminishing returns where you're drinking a lot of water, but it's just going right through you. You don't have any salt left to absorb. So at Mohican last year, I was eating a salt tablet every 30 or 45 minutes, I think, in addition to the water, just to help with hydration. But my goal is, it's hard to overhydrate. It is possible, but it's difficult. And so I would say I err on the side of caution and just try to basically be consistently sipping on things. There are certain points of if I know it's going to be a hot stretch, I make it a point to finish both of my water bottles between aid stations, again, just so that I know that I'm taking in enough water. There's other things that I do, like just monitoring if my watch band is starting to get really tight. That's a sign, like that gives me a sign that like, hey, something's up, you're dehydrated, you might need, it looks like you're like swelling with water, you might need a little bit more salt or a little bit less salt. So just kind of gauging it off of things in the moment to deal with. But that's one of those puzzle pieces and problem solving in the moment that is important to take a look at. So now I want to switch again, and again, if y'all have questions for the crew that's going to be helping out, we talked about the differences between road races and ultras. Obviously, you started crewing for the road races. What was the transition like, moving from like a marathon, crewing at a marathon, to that first Bandera crewing experience?
Well, Bandera was a little different than Mohican. Mohican was, the easier part of Mohican was, with a marathon, you have to drive to all these different places because it's not a loop, right? It's like all over the place. So it's harder in that respect to drive and find parking and deal with road closures and all that stuff. The easy part about Mohican was we were just sitting in one place and just set up a tent and kind of went from there. I guess Bandera was similar too, but like we had to drive places, right, at Bandera, but they were very close, and it was easier because we were in the middle of a state park. And
Bandera it was a loop, but it's sort of it was kind of, not like out and backs, but it was kind of like loops around a centralized location, so it was easier to
and we were in like a park, right, or like a reserve or whatever, so there wasn't normal traffic of people going grocery shopping or to the park or something on a Saturday. But I think it's easier when it's just a loop like that. A loop like, am I not close enough to the microphone?
I don't know.
I think it's easier when it's a loop like a Mohican, so you're not having to pick up, worry about finding parking. That's always my biggest stressor for a road race, is like finding parking, or making sure that a road is enclosed, and dealing with all that stuff, I think.
Yeah, because that's a consideration too, is just especially depending on how many folks are running the races. These are in relatively remote locations. They're oftentimes in state parks, so the trail it could be more or less accessible at different parts. And if you have a lot of people trying to crew their runners at different points, parking becomes a main issue. And that's something the race usually puts out also, is like, hey, at these places, you can only park in a parking lot. If there's no spots in the lot, you can't park there.
Or like
no street
Google
parking.
Maps doesn't take into account that you're closing a side road that you normally would drive down. So that's the hardest part about that.
That's a challenge.
So I would say that is what I like best about the 100-milers, is just
Easier
looping around. Just looping. Yeah, that would be the easiest part.
Joe has a really good question. How many quesadillas will you make?
Ooh.
And do you make them all at once?
Oh.
Or do you spread it out?
What a great multi-step question. So I think you got one quesadilla for each loop. So I made a couple, I don't know, two or three. I think I had 3 ready because you dropped during that last loop. And they are made fresh. I mean, as fresh as they can be. Like Ryan said earlier, it could be anywhere from, what'd you say, 25 minutes on either side of what your prediction is. So they were fresh, but not always super hot. But then also they were kept in your backpack if you were ever to eat them. But as you said, you never ate them. So I don't know, probably made like 3 or 4. But also we made them for Todd too. We had lots of quesadillas. Everything.
A lot of extra food for whoever's interested. Good call, Darla. I realize we missed a question from, I think it's Alexis on Vince's account, but Lauren, what is training and recovery like for you, the dedication and all the emotion that you go through during the race?
That's a hard question. It's always a relief when it's over.
For both of us, I think.
But then for me, it doesn't end when it's over, because when we went to Mohican, I had to drive home. So I was in charge of, what was that, like a 18-hour drive? No, that's stupid.
Like
that was stupid.
8 or 9 hours.
That was stupid. I got excited and ahead of myself. But it was still a long drive, so it doesn't end for me right there. But it's always a relief. But also, I am of the mindset that it's time to go home right away. So Ryan finished and we woke up and I was like, we need to pack the car and we need to go. It's time to leave. This is over. When Ryan's training, it gets frustrating sometimes, right? Because that's what all of his days are dedicated to. But I've learned to enjoy watching my TV shows and doing the things I like to do. So it hasn't been so much of an issue on my end this go around.
And that's something I would say also can't be understated. And when I talk about like how I could never do this without your support, is like, especially during ultras, to a point, I think it's somewhat less intense at times, but like when I notice it, especially when I'm training for a marathon, like a really strong PR effort for a marathon, during the peak training weeks, once we get up to a certain point, like I fully recognize that I can be miserable to be around or to deal with, because I'm exhausted almost every day. I spend so much time running, like it's a huge time suck. On the weekends, I'm gone for hours at a time. When I get back, all I want to do is eat, and then I need another like hour or two to take a nap. Like it is a beast of a routine. And so yeah, like having the full support during that, I think is so couldn't be done without it. And again, something I don't think can be understated. And goes really well into, I see the comment, so good to see your wife on with you. You are blessed to have her support. And I 100% agree. And before we answer Brian's question, I want to use that to transition into a game that we wanted to play.
Oh.
So I'm going to pass out some paper to see how well, kind of, I guess we know each other in certain circumstances. But we're gonna, it's like what is it, the newlywed game? Is
That's
that how
exactly
it works?
what it is.
So we're gonna ask questions. We're both gonna write down an answer and then see how well we know each other. Oh, and Gabby, and adding commuting to work in that. Yes. So I would say, especially now that it's a 90-minute commute, I think a new
Don't do
misery. No, we gotta fold it.
But
so
I
that
hate
you,
that sound.
Oh, you do hate folding. A new level of misery that's been unlocked is, especially if I have a long run. Right, I've been doing mostly 6-milers during the week, so it isn't as horrible. I'll get up at like 4:30 or 4:45.
Which is wonderful for me.
for that. But like if I any longer than that, I have to get up at like 4. I think I got up at 3:45 one day. So it's not just me getting up at the crack of dawn to run, and obviously my alarm disturbing, but I also then want to go to bed at like 7 o'clock. So again, miserable to be around.
He never even wants to watch Survivor live,
Yeah,
which is
so.
really hard because it's an early TV show. All right, how do we do this?
So the first question that we're going to ask, Brian also wanted to know what your favorite post-race meal is, but I feel like this should be an easy one. So we're going to do a gimme, and people in the chat probably also know my answer to this.
Well,
but
I'm
what
scared.
is
Is it
what is
obvious?
my favorite post-race / post-long run meal? And put it in the chat if you know it.
Oh no.
All right, so
Wait.
favorite post-run / race.
I got so
meal.
specific. Okay.
On the count of 3, we'll
1,
put
2
them down like this, and
No,
we'll flip
okay,
them up to the
okay,
camera.
I already showed the
1,
camera mine.
2, 3. But then we have to look at each other. Pizza, Red Baron, classic crust, pepperoni.
I didn't
the
write
favorite
pepperoni.
post-race meal. Also pre-live stream meal. That's what I ate for dinner tonight.
Also-
Yep, Gabby got it. Red Baron pizza. Give me a sponsorship already, Red Baron. I will run all of my races on Red Baron pizza. Liz guessed Taco Bell. That is an excellent guess, and you saw me at my best or worst, depending on how you view it, after the Goggins 4x4x48 challenge. After 48 hours running 48 miles, I think I ate at least one of everything on the Taco Bell menu.
It's really disgusting.
If I'm in Freeport, I'm eating Taco Bell. All right, so Lauren, we've got a guest from John, red wine.
He knows me so well.
So what is your favorite post-race?
Oh, well, it's not as fun for me because I'm not doing all the calorie burning work. I really...
Well, you've had a day. It's been a day.
I know, but I don't even know. I don't know. I just saw Joe write hot dog in the chat, and now all I can think about is hot dogs.
We do love hot dogs. Glizzies, as I hear the new slang is.
Ew, I hated that.
I don't like it.
I think red wine. Brian's also saying red wine, and yeah. Wow, so many red wines in the chat. You guys know. Yeah, just red wine. Give me all the wine.
All right, the next question that I'm going to ask, that we'll do the writing down again. What was your favorite race of mine to spectate? So you're
Not
answering
crew?
it. Not crew, or not. I mean crew or spectate. What has been your favorite race to participate in me running?
Okay.
I'm gonna write what I think you think.
Oh,
if
this
that
is
makes sense.
silly. Okay.
I just want to see how close we are and how aligned we are. I only have 2 more.
This is not an
I only have
ultra.
1 more of these.
This doesn't have to be
Don't-
ultra.
It doesn't have to be, but don't give anything away.
No, I'm sorry. That's not what I was giving away.
Oh yeah, this
I'm
any
just
race,
saying.
any race.
I don't think you're writing this. Okay.
All right.
I was like, wow, more
Not
Red
that.
Baron.
All right, favorite race for you to watch. New York City!
Oh, so
Obviously, a New York City girl. Knew you would have loved that one. Boom, we're more aligned. If anybody has any other questions they want to quiz us on, let us
No,
know.
I
We'll
don't
work
like
that in. I only have 1 more of these, and then we got a couple of questions on Instagram as well that we'll run through. All right, so the last one that I have is on the flip side. What is, and this is one I had a hard time with also, so I hope it's not too difficult, but what do you think my proudest race finish is?
Oh, I have 2.
My favorite race finish.
Your favorite race finish?
Yeah.
Okay. I think this is wrong. I had 2. I don't know. I think you're proud after every race finish.
Fine. I mean, that's fair too. 1, 2, 3. Oh, it wasn't Coastal
Isn't that
Delaware.
the same thing?
Coastal Delaware was at the beach. Delaware was in Wilmington.
Oh, well,
that was
Delaware.
my first marathon. Close with Delaware. Obviously, you had to know. Both going to represent the hometowns. But yeah, Delaware just because everything went so well for that race. Ryan
runs road races.
Trail or road, yeah.
Ryan runs road races.
We did answer. I can't remember if this was on or off stream, but yes, we are. It's gonna be. There are pros to both. We won't do a flip up for this, but road is the direction that we're headed. And if I didn't write road, I would be in a lot of trouble. So we would both write road.
Ryan's winking because we're going to be at this trail stuff for a long time, I think.
I've said I want to commit back to marathons. Marathons is my goal moving forward. I've got Berlin coming up in September.
We've got Berlin
coming up in September. I'm looking past Rocky Raccoon. I've got my eye on it. Like, that's the focus for now, but already thinking about how we're going to commit to the road races. But I would like to continue to do trail races, just not as aggressive as a 100-miler. I really want to get into 50Ks. I think that would be very fun because you can do those very, like, in less than a day and still enjoy the experience. Even an occasional 100K, I really enjoyed that distance. But I think once you get to anything past that, when you're going into multi-day, it's just, there's going to be suffering, and I'm moving away from that and back to the roads, especially the road marathons. But a couple Instagram questions. Again, if you folks have any more questions, let us know. I want to make sure I get the wording of these right because I thought they were very, very sweet questions from the followers. So the first one comes from Joan Kuzma, one of the biggest I Run on Beer fans, who we had the pleasure of both. I ran with her. You got to come to the race as well. But what was the Smutty Nose Rock Fest, which is there's a 10K half marathon, incredible race in Hampton Beach, New Hampshire, I think is the name of the town. Yep. Super, super fun. Smutty Nose Brewery, incredible brewery. Their beer, you can get it in New York, is delicious, but the facility up there was also very cool, but a very, very fun race. And I think all around we enjoyed that experience greatly. Very also, fun. My current half marathon PR. But she would like to ask, after having experienced that race, how do you do it all? You are such an amazing help during an event.
Guys, I don't like having attention put on me. How do I do it all? Lots of red wine. I don't know. No, I don't drink a lot of red wine anymore. I don't know. It's just part of my Gemini personality. When one personality gets tired, the other one wakes up and takes over.
I love that response. I think very true.
Those Geminis, they come out to play. I think that's exactly how it goes.
Well, I would give my 2 cents because I have no problem talking you up. But just I also think your innate. I feel like you just are innately a very caring and help. You are the helper. You want to make sure everyone is doing their best, everyone's okay in every situation, and I feel like that's how you thrive so much in these cases. Is you are so acutely aware of what issues people might be going through, and just without having to think, the responses are right there for you, or the solutions are right there for you. The next question comes from the one and only Nikki Gelfand. Has a question that I would also like to know the answer to. How do you stay so damn cute?
Oh, God, I just love that Nickster so much. Nikki has a lot to do with it. She keeps me feeling cute all the time.
Yeah.
Is really what happens. Yeah.
It seems seamless.
It is.
Flawless.
It is flawless. Yeah. It is. It's pretty flawless.
We've got another question just about future races. Are you ever going to come down to the Mississippi Blues Marathon? Maybe one year. Good food and atmosphere. I would love to. I know a lot of my friends are doing, or a lot of folks I run with are doing the 50 States Challenge, either to run a marathon in every state. I don't think I'll go that far, but maybe like a half marathon or marathon in each state. I've done Delaware, New York, and DC, I guess, are the 3 marathons that I've run. Half marathons at a handful more states that as well. I would love to visit Mississippi. I agree. The food, for one thing, would love to do that.
I just looked at my phone. Sorry, Nikki texted me that.
Oh,
she helps. She feels cute. Sorry.
I was just going to say There's a lot of travel races. That's something I also can't be said enough. The flexibility from my loving wife for the places that we travel and turning all of our vacations into racecations. So I do want to be very conscious of how many travel trips that we have. Berlin is obviously a big one in September, but the one that the next one on my list, I think, unless there's a marathon that presents itself that I'm like, I gotta do this, but I've been dying to do Urban Bourbon in Kentucky. I for sure want to hit up that race again for the food, for the bourbon, obviously, but no, I do want to do a circuit around the country and just continue to travel, because I feel like it's a great way to, most of the races, the courses are very cool. They do a good job of showing you around the local area, getting to experience the culture during the run, but then also the celebrations afterwards are obviously what it's all about. And I see Joe/Christy mentioned I need a refill. I had my noon to hydrate, but then I have my backup water, so don't worry, this one's still full. I know we are coming up on an hour, so are there other...
Yes, Vince. Yes, Vince, we have to get him doing the beer mile again for sure. This time, I mean, you didn't vom this last time.
No,
you
that
were
was
very drunk going to my parents though.
I think we bring this up. We've brought it up in a handful of live videos. If you're interested in watching my last beer mile attempt, it is on YouTube. Because to have an official beer mile entry, you have to record the full unedited attempt, like one continuous recording with no cuts with the timer, so that you can see how it goes. So we did that. You can watch the full beer mile, but I trained for that. I was in really good running shape at the time. What I needed to train for was the chugging. Joe/Christy asked it for what is the beer mile. It is drinking
exactly what it sounds
4
like.
beers and running a mile on a track. So it's 4 beers, 4 laps around the track. You drink a full beer before every lap. And if you're familiar with a track, at the starting line, there's a relay switch zone. For relay races, for track meets, that's the area where you can pass the baton. I think it's like 10 to 20 meters maybe. Probably 10, like 10-ish, 10 to 20 meters, whatever it is. It's a short distance. During the beer mile, according to the official rules, that is the transition zone where you can drink a beer. So you can walk while you're drinking the beer, but you only have that short distance to consume it. Again, have to drink the full beer, run a lap. So it's beer lap, beer lap, beer lap, beer lap. 4 beers, 4 laps around the track makes the beer mile. My first attempt, I think, was like 15 minutes. I threw up quite a few times.
You forgot to say, every time you throw up.
If you throw up, you have to run a penalty lap. No matter how many times you throw up, it's just one penalty lap. So if you throw up 10 times, it's still just 1 lap. I didn't hit that mark, but it was pretty aggressive. Trained for the chugging for this one. We went with Bud Light Platinums. Very smooth beer, easy to chug, but a little bit higher in alcohol. And as Lauren mentioned, the benefit of throwing up during the beer mile is your body doesn't have enough time to actually absorb any of the alcohol. So you finish the race feeling good. Running the beer mile and not puking, you drink 4, I think they're like 6.5% beers. You drink 4 of those. It took me like 8.5 minutes to run and drink the 4 beers, 8.5 minute mile. So I was very impressed with that time. But then was doing it on somewhat of an empty stomach, because obviously wanted my stomach to be empty for the run and to hold so much beer. And so not having any food in my stomach, chugging the 4 beers in 8 minutes, we immediately went over to Lauren's parents for a wonderful evening with the family. And that beer hit me very quick, and I was in desperate need of food. I was in pretty rough shape as we got there. But I would love to do another beer mile. I want to get in better. I like the way that it worked out before was perfect, where I was in really good running shape, so I didn't have to do much training, like speed work, to train for the mile part. It was just training for the drinking part. I would love to do that again. I also love doing those with a group of people. This last one I did on my own. The first one we did with like 5 or 6 other guys. It's very fun because it's just utter chaos. It can be hard to find a track that's like not crowded enough that people aren't going to complain if it's while that chaos is going on, but would love to do that. And sounds worse than Dizzy Bat. It for sure is. It cannot be describe the discomfort that you feel. Basically just like think of like a 2-liter bottle of Coke and Mentos and just like shaking it up while you're running. How tight that gets is basically what your stomach feels like. Just the shaking is insane. Brian will do one. Yes.
Yay, Brian!
This is happening. This is
Excellent.
happening. Goal in 2023, Brian, you're coming out to Queens, or maybe we'll go back out to Long Island. It's a little less crowded. That track we did it on was pretty solid. I think it was a
We love an elementary school track.
I think it was a middle school. An undisclosed middle school track, but on the weekend, so no one's there. But yes, agree. We'll have to do another one, and we'll have to record it.
It's really cute how Jonathan thinks that I run with you.
We've run a race together.
I know
we've run a couple races
I
together.
know. Well, that was back in my prime. I'm far out of my prime now. But.
There's several races that we've participated in together, but there's one that comes to mind that we ran the whole race together. The Yingling Oktoberfest.
Oh, yes.
We ran the whole Yingling.
Certainly back in my prime.
That was a really fun race. That was a cool race.
That was fun.
Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, beautiful little town.
Beautiful.
But no, we've done the New Orleans half. We did that one together at least
I'm sorry.
once.
I read the comment as, do we like run with each other? To which the answer is usually no. If I run the same race as you.
But yes, we have.
But yes, we
in
have.
the past.
We have run several races at the same time, just at certainly different paces.
And I see Tiger Jazz went to the Abita Brewery and ran a mile after slowest time I ever did. I've had similar experiences. I've done run streaks in the past, and some of my slowest miles where like on a day I might have forgotten to run or just didn't have time, and then had dinner, had beers, and was like, I gotta get a mile in to keep up the running streak. And running on a full belly, usually it was over the summer, so with hot dogs and beer in the belly was a rough ride.
Well, Christy says she'll come to watch you guys do the beer mile with me, which means, Christy, you are officially crewing with me for the beer mile.
It sounds like this event is coming together. We'll get the folks on board. Steve, we could probably get Steve and Alyssa in on it.
Yeah,
oh,
Alyssa
we've got a
will do
group.
it.
We've got a group, guys.
It's
This is
happening.
happening. It's going to be recorded. We did it live last time too.
We did.
We had it live on Instagram during. So if we get enough support and
Your
get the
mom
logistics together.
joined the live video. It was great. Remember when she joined in?
Yep. And it was the best part about that was we filmed the whole thing. And then at the end, doing the post-run interview on live, everybody is we're responding to comments and everything like that. And in real time, watching me go from sober to very drunk, of just like my eyes glazing over and just like it hitting me so fast was very, very funny. So yeah, we'll have to recreate that with a big group.
That'd be so fun.
But I know we're over an hour already, so if anyone has any last-minute burning questions, I have a couple. So I will ask my first one. I'll see if anything else comes in, but I think we're going to start to wind down. But the two questions I have are the first one that I have before we wrap up. With everything that you've seen from past performances, with how training has been going so far, with your experience from last year's Mohican, how are you feeling generally about the crewing effort, about the preparation, about going into Rocky Raccoon?
I feel great about the crewing effort now. Doing a 100-miler before, I feel good about it. I don't feel great that you mentioned early on that you're thinking we're not going to have the magic blue backpack. So I've already been thinking this whole time about how that's going to be my bag that I'm traveling with. And how
it just doesn't fit in the overhead.
Then I'll like pack it up and leave it in my backpack. I don't know, but the magic blue backpack has to come.
It can fit in the overhead, but people get mad at you if they see you bring it on.
Right. Well, no, I'll just leave it wrapped up and like throw it somewhere. I'm feeling good about it. My only concern is the cold, because it was so cold at Bandera a couple years ago. Yeah. So my only worry is the cold and being warm enough. Me being warm enough and you guys being warm enough. But I'm stoked because we have such a dope crew, and it's gonna be great.
That's something we've been trying to avoid looking at going into it, is just not worrying too much about the weather right now, because again, I don't think it's worth stressing or having anxiety over things that you can't control. Once we get in the 10 days, when I'll start looking at it, because then it's about starting to prepare for what the realistic weather is going to be. I have peaked just to mentally start preparing of what it could be, and there's significant temperature swings. I think like some of the days I saw it was like it would be in like the 60s during the day, high 60s, low 70s during the day, and then down to like mid to low 40s, even high 30s overnight. So obviously like very warm during the day, which will turn to feeling very cold overnight, especially once we've expended that much energy, burned that many calories. So I think that's the worry, is just what the temperature is going to be. Ideally, some of the days I've seen, it would be like, if it gets into the 70s, that's not the end of the world. We can handle that for sure. But if the highest it got was like 70 or high 60s, and the lowest it got was like in the 40s, that would be ideal. The other challenge that we didn't have to worry about at Mohican was it was over the summer, so day was very long and night was very short. It is the opposite right now, where so much of this race is going to be overnight, or there's just going to be such a significant chunk of time that's in the dark. The sun is going to set at like 5 o'clock, which sucks.
I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah, it's set at like 9 o'clock in Mohican, based on where they were in the time zone. So that is going to be miserable. Just that the sun's going to set very, very early, rise relatively late. Not looking forward to that part. But
wow, I really hadn't thought about the depressing part about the sun.
Again, control what you can control. Don't worry about the rest. Just prepare for how to get through it. And I think that's what my focus has been on, understanding that the physical training hasn't gone as well as I would have liked. Really, really focusing on the mental piece, why we're doing this, what motivates me, and like what I can turn to. I have I forget if I mentioned this to you. I know I mentioned before Mohican, but I've been working on it more. I have the We're Not Dead Yet playlist of songs that are like guaranteed to bring me out of a funk. Certain songs for certain situations. So I'll share that with you also. But like if I'm coming into an aid station looking rough, that you can just put the headphones on and hit play just so like I can get in the zone. AutoZone. TurboTax. Inside jokes that you all love. But yeah, just figuring out the ways like when we hit those lows, what are we gonna do? All right, looks like Vince/Alexis has another question, and this will be the last one before we close, before my final one to close. But if you could take all of Ryan's training and give it to yourself, so you just show up and get to do the race, which would you pick to do?
I would not run the race. Ryan's in charge of running the race. I will carry the magical blue backpack all day, every day.
I guess
Lauren cuts off at 13.1. She'd love to run a marathon one day, but I'm not sure. I'm gonna be. What's that Amy Schumer movie? So and so runs a marathon.
Not Amy Schumer. That was I don't know the actress's name, but Jillian from Workaholics.
She runs a marathon. Like maybe one day I'll be Jillian from Workaholics.
I was about to say, if you've never seen it, highly recommend. But I guess it's hard to recommend if we can't remember the title. If someone remembers it, put it in the comment. It's a fantastic movie. I think it was an Amazon Prime movie, but it is a beautiful true story of a woman who was just like going through a really hard time and just decided and committed to running a marathon. It changed her I won't say it changed her personality, but changed her whole outlook, really like dove into the culture of running. And I think it was cool to watch that together, because it was like from your perspective, seeing like how, again, that switch for her of like how much she was able to change. And the actual actress trained for and ran the New York City Marathon, which I feel like made it feel a lot more real. But as from the running side, I feel like they did such a good job capturing the highs of training, but then also the lows that people don't necessarily talk about, like dealing with the isolating factor of it all, especially your first marathon when you're going out for a 3-hour training run on the weekend.
Joe gets it. Brittany runs a marathon.
That's the one. 10 out of 10 would recommend. It's a really, really good movie. Yeah. But I know we've gone over the hour, so I've got one final, somewhat sarcastic question before we close out the chat. But are we bringing home a belt buckle this year?
Oh, I don't want to answer that question. I'm not putting anything into the universe. It's whatever you put into the universe. I've said every year you're bringing home the belt buckle, so I will continue with that trend, but my positive vibes are out there.
So I'm feeling we're bringing home the belt buckle. I'll answer it for the both of us. It's go big or go home here. This is the all or nothing race.
Because Ryan runs road races.
Ryan runs road races after this. We're converting. We're going for it. And we've got some fun ones. So in closing, we've got some fun races to prepare for. Which we talked about running races together that Lauren is thinking about registering for.
She's doing it.
Doing it. All right, we're committed. You heard it here. We're committed. We're
She's only
doing the
doing
race.
the 5K.
So the Hot Chocolate 5K in Philadelphia. If anybody wants to run it with us, that is a Bib Rave sponsored race. So I do have a discount code if you use BRP Run Hat. BRP Run Hat. You get a free hat with your registration and a little bit off the price. There's a 5K, 10K, 15K there. Very, very excited for that race. We've done it before. We've done it in the past in
doing
person.
It for the treats at the end.
And yeah, the treats at the end are phenomenal. That's another race, that we've run together. You ran that one last year, or the last time we did it as well. But great race, really, really beautiful tour of Philadelphia. And yeah, 5K, 10K, 15K. That's on April 1st.
Broad Street.
We'll be back at Broad Street, which you also might be running.
I'll do it.
That one's a 10-miler. That's at the end of April 3rd, 27th, or 30th, whatever the weekend is.
First weekend of May.
No, remember they rescheduled it.
You're right.
So that one's at the end of April, the 10-miler, and then it is the goal, or the hope is that's adequate training, adequate base training to be in good enough shape to then start very serious marathon training for Berlin in September. If all goes well with that, great. Or if I decide I didn't hit the effort that I wanted to, it's nice and early in the fall marathon season, so I could always schedule something later in the fall as well. But it should be great. We're very, very excited. Alexis, Bill, and Joni will all be doing the 5K as well. I forget if I mentioned that to you, but yes, the Kuzmas are coming in force to run the hot chocolate race. My brother-in-law Connor helping to train him for his first ever race.
Alyssa and Steve are hopefully
and Steve, hopefully. So that should be a fun group run, and this will be Connor's first race, and he's doing the 10K. So very excited.
Go Connie boy.
But I think that's everything. I had a lot of fun. This is way easier with two people to have a conversation with. I had fun too, although
I paced the whole hour and a half after getting home before we got on here. So I did a lot of pacing, and I was very
did great.
nervous.
It didn't come through at all. Plus, we had that trial run of 10 minutes.
Thank God the trial run
Thank you for mentioning it in the chat. Can't wait to see you guys. Let us know that it was not actually on live. We'll have to do these more frequently so I don't get out of the habit of doing them, and I actually remember how to start the stream. So glad that you all enjoyed it as well. Hopefully, we'll be able to do much more of these in the future. I'm feeling like if we have such a big group doing Philly, we'll have to get an Airbnb with strong Wi-Fi so that we can do a pre-race.
Well, you know what we have to do now this is our first time doing a live stream together, and hoping that you'll invite me back to do more. We need a closing gimmick. Do we high five when we leave, or do we just spirit fingers at the camera? What do we do?
We do need something special. My sign off is always for the videos is always thank you. As always, thank you all for tuning in. I'll see you around. Cheers. That's very lame for us, and very lame in general. But.
I mean, we could just over the head high five. I don't know what you think.
All right, we could try it.
All right.
But you have to straighten out. I feel
I'm so sorry. Yeah.
This is gonna be
You're right.
And however good it goes, I'm gonna pull this so that it ends the stream right as. However good it goes, we're just doing one effort.
Doing it.
So we're gonna see how well it goes.
All right. So this was fun.
We had a blast. Love y'all.